Welcome to another edition of HorsCenter, everyone. I am Brian Zipsey, and as always, I have the great pleasure of being joined by my co-host to the East Coast. That's Matt Schiffman. How are you today, Matt?
I'm great, Brian. It's going to be an East Coast version of HorsCenter with the Pennsylvania Derby show.
Pennsylvania Derby. Matt, don't forget about the girls, the Cotillion. Yes, we're all about Parks this week. It's the preview for the big day at Parks. It's Saturday. Penn Derby, $1 million. Cotillion, $1 million. They're both grade ones this year, and they both attracted some pretty good fields. Why don't we go boys first, Matt? I think this is the race that certainly still has some implications as far as an Eclipse Award in that wide open 3-year-old male division. But I think the leader, at least the dirt leader, West Coast, off his 3 straight stakes wins and Travers score, is the horse to beat in here, and is probably getting close, at least, to an Eclipse Award. But neither of us, I believe, Matt, think West Coast is unbeatable on Saturday.
I don't think he's unbeatable in here. This is the field turned out to be a large field, an interesting field with a lot of speed in the race. So there's strategy questions with West Coast and how Mike Smith will ride him in here. Will he try and go to the lead and take the race there again? It's going to be interesting to see.
Yeah, I don't think there's any chance in the world of that happening, Matt, not with the speed lining up for this Penn Derby. Now, the Travers was a little bit out of the norm for West Coast, but it worked well on that long 10-furlong race. Nobody really went with him fast, always dreaming laid off just enough where West Coast had a lot left for that stretch run. And it was a brilliant ride by Mike Smith, and it worked out very well for the progressive and talented Flatter Colt. However, they're not going to be on the lead this time around. I don't see it anyway, not with speed like Irish War Cry, Timeline, Outplay in here. So I think West Coast comes from off the pace a little bit, as he's done in most of his races, as does my top pick, Matt. IRAP has shown some speed in the past too, but I think, again, IRAP will be more in the middle of the pack this time. And they both ran in the Travers. West Coast, I think, had the best trip of the big horses that ran, Gunavera and IRAP. IRAP made a nice move, but came up short at 1.25 miles. I like him back at 1.125 miles.
Yeah, Brian, you've liked IRAP for a good number of races, and certainly there's lots of reason to like him in here. Going to set up perfectly for him, like you said. The speed with Timeline, who's breaking from the 1 post, and Outplay, who's breaking from the 2 post. Those two are just going to go. They're fast horses. They're both talented horses. Timeline was 4 for 4 before the Haskell, and Outplay's most recent race in the Curlin at Belmont Park was a very, very nice performance. They like to be out on the lead, and being on the inside, they're going to go. Another horse that I find interesting in here is Irish War Cry, who is in the 8 post and has certainly shown interest in being on the lead recently, but it hasn't worked out very well for that horse.
Yeah, Irish War Cry, I think, has a tactical advantage in this one, at least in this regard. There's a lot of speed, and that might not help him. But being outside of the 2 other real speed horses, as you mentioned, they break from the 1 Timeline and the 2 Outplay. So that gives Irish War Cry the good opportunity to see what those other 2 horses are doing and probably stalk in third. Frankly, of the 3, I think Irish War Cry is the biggest threat in here. I know Timeline was really pounded down in the Haskell as an undefeated horse, but I think we saw a little bit of weakness in him, especially going 9 furlongs. So I like Irish War Cry the best of those 3. Getting back to the Travers, Giuseppe the Great, I think, has just been a very consistent horse, and he will be another one that can rally a little bit in here. He, too, should benefit from the drop from 10 furlongs back to 9. Certainly West Coast, neither Matt nor I am saying that West Coast could not win this race. He certainly can, but I think at 2-1 or lower in this good 10-horse field, there's value to be had. And plus, Matt, the 3-year-old males, if we learned anything this year, it's that they are taking turns beating each other. So expecting West Coast to win another big one might be expecting too much in this foal crop.
Yeah, expecting a horse to win 2 big Grade 1s in a row is something that certainly hasn't happened all year long. And getting back to Irish War Cry a little bit, I want to note that they're making a rider change for whatever reasons. Rajiv Mirage may have a better mount or other things going on in New York, but they're making a rider change. They're going back to Fergal Lynch, who rode Irish War Cry in his first couple races. And one of those races was in his maiden race where he rallied from behind. I like Irish War Cry in here, Brian, if he's going to get that kind of trip. You said the 8 post will probably kind of force him into that, and I like that. I would be happy to see Irish War Cry sitting a little bit outside the speed in a stalking position, making a run instead of using up a lot of energy early in the race. Irish War Cry is going to be my pick in here, although I like your pick of IRAP. Also, the race sets up perfectly for that Doug O'Neill runner, but West Coast certainly can't be dismissed easily, but I'm not going to like the price on that horse.
Yeah, the price, I think, is part of the equation here, because I think after the Travers and the fact that he's won 3 straight stakes now, West Coast is really going to get bet, and I think there's going to be a gap between West Coast, maybe 8 to 5-ish, and the other horses we're talking about. Maybe our horse is our second, third choice. Maybe Timeline is in that group as well. But there will be a gap between the favorite and the second choice. I think we both agree on that, Matt. We haven't mentioned other horses in here. Watch Me Whip, Game Over, Talk Logistics, Term of Art. I think they all have a little bit to like. Maybe Term of Art the least of that bunch. I think Watch Me Whip is a talented horse for Dale Romans, who hasn't had a good chance to show it yet. The Indiana Derby was his last race. It's been a while now. He's been scratched out of a few for different reasons, but he was way back on a track that it's tough to come from way back in there. Watch Me Whip, I think, has a little more talent than we can see on paper. Game Over's only made 4 starts, and he was second in the West Virginia Derby last time. He might be a horse improving, although he keeps changing barns for Ron Luch, which is never the best sign in the world. I just like IRAP best, knowing how good he was at those 9 furlong races, the Bluegrass, the Ohio Derby, the Indiana Derby. He's got a pretty explosive move now as he's gotten better, and I think that's a move that can win this race heading into the stretch. So Matt likes Irish War Cry and IRAP. I like IRAP, and Irish War Cry is the best too. Giuseppe the Great, I think at double digits, is a horse that I would like to play in exotics a little bit, Matt.
Yep, and like we said, we're not going to be surprised if West Coast wins a big one and wins the race, or certainly gets into the exactas and the trifectas there. But we got to take a shot against him here.
Take a shot against the chalk in the Penn Derby. Sounds like a plan, sir. Hey, now the race before the Pennsylvania Derby is a very interesting race. The Pennsylvania Derby drew 10, but the Cotillion, the $1 million Cotillion, a race that's produced champions and Breeders' Cup winners, a lot of good fillies over the years, has drawn 12. Very good chance that they've drawn the 3-year-old filly champion once again.
Yeah, I was very surprised when the Cotillion came up with 12 horses. I don't think 12 horses are going to start, because part of the field is a 3-horse Mike Rapoli, Todd Pletcher entry, in which Johnny V is named as the rider in all 3. So that likely means that whole gang is not going to start in there. So probably we'll end up with a field of 10. But it's a very good field of 10. A lot of the top 3-year-old contenders in the big races from the summer are in the race. Almost all of them except for a late.
Yeah, we're missing a late, the Alabama winner, who's looking for the Breeders' Cup distaff. We're missing Unique Bella, who, of course, has been on the bench for most of the season after starting the year so well. She's pointing for the Breeders' Cup filly and mare sprint now. But we do have the queen pin of the 3-year-old filly division in Abel Tasman. I think, Matt, looking at this, I handicapped this long and hard, thinking who was the filly that was going to step up and really make it tough on Abel Tasman. And I couldn't come up with anyone. Now, there's a bunch of good fillies in here, But Abel Tasman, if she runs her best race, I think she's the more likely favorite of the two, West Coast and Abel Tasman, both trained by Bob Baffert, by the way. And maybe she's a little lower, so maybe I'm not telling anybody what they don't already know. But I think she's the more likely winner of the two favorites. But the horse I came up liking second best is actually a horse she's beaten 3 times already. Salty is outside. There is some speed in here. Salty runs nothing but good races. I even liked her Alabama, probably going a little farther than she wanted to go. And I think Salty, again, 3 times a loser already to Abel Tasman, often with some sort of excuse, is the second most likely winner of this year's Cotillion.
I agree about Abel Tasman in here, Brian. Out of these two big Bob Baffert horses that are coming east, Abel Tasman is, I think, the more likely, the more logical of the two to get a victory. But I think Abel Tasman is going to be a far lower price at the betting windows also. And I must say, Brian, if we learned one thing this summer from the defeat of Arrogate in the San Diego Handicap and then later on the Pacific Classic, we learned that no matter who the horse is, nobody is a sure thing in horse racing. Abel Tasman has been off since her victory in the Coaching Club American Oaks at Saratoga at the end of July. Is that a reason to play against her? I don't know, maybe. But Salty is certainly a horse that is a threat in here. Salty is in the 10 post, and I think the positive of that is it's going to be a lot harder for her to find trouble out there. She's going to be outside everybody. Rider Tyler Gaffalione all just has to try and keep her clear and get her to make a run. So that outside post, I think, is a positive for Salty. Salty, I've liked Salty in too many races this summer, so I just can't pick her again, Brian. I've gotten burned all summer long with that Cassie horse. I'm going to go with a horse that I think is the one that's improving most in here, and that is Teresa Z. Teresa Z ran a really big race in the Monmouth Oaks, and before that had a very nice prep in an allowance race. Javier Castellano is up on the horse. Again, it's a horse that can run off the pace in a Cotillion that I think is going to have a good solid pace, just like the Pennsylvania Derby.
Yes, Matt, I think you're right. I think the pace should be good in here. The one filly certainly that ensures a lively pace in this Cotillion is Run and Go. And Run and Go is an interesting filly. She's only had 2 starts. I remember thinking Pavel starting in the Jim Dandy a while ago off of 1 start was just too much too soon. Run and Go's had 2. It might be a little bit of a case of the same, maybe too much too soon. Pavel has done really well, by the way, with a good Jim Dandy and then a big Smarty Jones win. So maybe Run and Go has that kind of talent, and maybe that second race can even give her more of a chance. So Run and Go is a filly I'm really eager to see what she can do in here, because she's a fresh face, and her first 2 races were fast and impressive. Having said that, I don't love her chances to beat Abel Tasman in here. By the way, Abel Tasman, getting back to her, this would be, if she does in fact win the Cotillion, this would be her 4th Grade 1 win, and I think you could tie a ribbon and a bow around the 3-year-old filly division. The Eclipse Award would be Abel Tasman's no matter what happens in the Breeders' Cup if she gets her 4th Grade 1 here. Teresa Z, for me, I agree everything you said. She should be running late. She's certainly improved. She had a lot of races, and she just looked like she turned the corner in her last 2. The Monmouth Oaks was a very solid performance. Having said that, I think it's a huge jump up in class for Teresa Z, and I think the as good as she's gotten of late might be buoyed a little bit by the fact that she's been running against lesser horses, and now she goes up against the best 3-year-old filly in the country. So I can't get on the Teresa Z bandwagon like you. Another interesting possibility, though, and maybe a filly that certainly can get up into the exotics. I already mentioned Run and Go, Thirst for the Cup, one of those Pletcher horses we were talking about, is another one who seems to have turned the corner of late, maybe aided by wet tracks. I'm not sure, but she also has really improved After a lot of races before, in her last two, she's looked much better. And then we haven't even mentioned some of the likely candidates, fillies that have been running in these stakes races a lot this year and have been competitive for sure. Horses like It Tis Well, Lockdown, Actress is still lightly raced and I think might still have bigger and better things in front of her. And even Mopetism has run some good stakes races. So any of those four fillies certainly could run a good race in here. It Tis Well might be a little less of a chance in here with the speed, but maybe Lockdown and Actress can really run improved races off their slightly disappointing finishes in the Alabama.
Yeah, because certainly Lockdown has been running against the best horses in the country. She's got a second in the Mother Goose, a third in the Gazelle, a third in the Kentucky Oaks. She likes to run a nice stalking style, which should set her up well in here with the pace that we see in there. Of course, Actress is noteworthy because she broke her maiden in the Grade 2 Black-Eyed Susan, and then had a little time off after them. A little bit more lightly raced than some of these other ones that we mentioned that may have had chance to get better and get experience. But I agree with your comment about Actress. This is a horse that has good things in front of her, but a little bit short on the experience and competition level compared to the others. I like Lockdown to get a piece of the exacta or trifecta in here, but like we said, Abel Tasman is a likely winner, but this is horse racing.
This is horse racing, and horse racing will be very good at Parx on Saturday, Matt. We've, of course, focused our show today on the Pennsylvania Derby and the Cotillion, but there's a few undercard stakes, and the couple most interesting for me were the Pennsylvania Derby Championship, Champion Stakes, I guess that's for older horses, and then the Gallant Bob. Now, first, the Gallant Bob. This is a sprint that usually produces some Breeders' Cup sprint horses. Good horses generally win the Gallant Bob. Good sprinters that are in form this time of year. Coal Front, Petrov, American Pastime are likely candidates in a very interesting Gallant Bob.
It is an interesting race, and it's worth noting that the Gallant Bob is a race on the undercard that has produced some interesting upsets, and I wouldn't be surprised if that happened on Saturday.
Yes, absolutely. Coal Front probably is favored, but he's vulnerable in here, and maybe Petrov has turned that corner that I keep talking about with that nice win at Saratoga. And then the race before the Gallant Bob, Matt, is the Penn Derby Champion Stakes. And just a very, these are not Grade 1 horses, maybe even Grade 2 horses. Paige McKenney, the Warrior's been around for years and just keeps running well. Just Call Kenny, beautiful horse that I always thought would have some big races in him. Finally broke through with a big race in the Island last time. Matt King Cole is talented speed. Mr. Jordan, I guess I could say the same. Donald Go Moon seems to be rounding into good form after a long layoff. So that's an interesting race as well.
It is a very nice field. And just to say a little bit more about Paige McKenney, what a throwback horse, Brian. A 7-year-old with 50 career starts and 19 wins and over $1.6 million in earnings. I'm not saying I'm picking the horse, but I got to give kudos and a round of applause to a warrior kind of horse from the good old days.
Yeah, he'd be a nice horse to own, wouldn't he, Matt? All right, so that's the big day from Parx. Matt, let's take a quick look back. I think the biggest races from last week were outside the United States. Maybe the St. Ledger over in Doncaster. Capri looked good again in there. But I want to focus on a couple miles that were run, again, outside the country. One was just barely outside the country, but the other one was far away. We need to talk about Winx a little bit. We're an American-based show, and we haven't talked about Winx nearly enough, Matt. This daughter of Street Cry she turned 6 just recently. Daughter of Street Cry has now won 20 straight races. She does it in exciting form. Calling her the best turf course in the world. I'm always a little hesitant to say that about an Australian. I thought So You Think was in that class a few years ago. Winx looks even better than So You Think. 20 in a row, Mr. Schiffman.
Thrilling is the right word, because every time I watch her races, you're like, okay, when are you going to go? When are you going to go? Because she waits and waits and waits. Hugh Bowman, the jockey, obviously knows her so well, and then she comes running, and every race is exciting with Winx.
She's a joy to watch for sure, and she's been running shorter to start her season this year. I think she might even be better going a little bit longer. Obviously, she's won the Cox Plate, their big 1.25 mile race, 2 straight. She'll be going for a 3rd straight, so she can stretch out a little bit in that one. But these sprints she has made exciting, but her finishes this year have just been, with a flourish, fantastic. And again, a wonderful, wonderful turf horse, a wonderful turf mare. And any horse that can win 20 in a row against the top competition, basically in Australia, deserves all the accolades she gets. I talked to her trainer over the winter this year, and he was talking about Royal Ascot possibly next year, and even maybe America after that, although he seemed much less confident that America will happen. But I think England and a place like Royal Ascot will happen for Winx. So she will be shared more on a world stage soon if all goes well. But first, she's got to keep it rolling down in Australia, and there's no sign of slowing down now. And then, of course, the Gray, the consistent Gray, who's now found a home in these middle distance races, especially a mile. He was my early Breeders' Cup mile pick a week ago. I liked what I saw, obviously, from World Approval in the Woodbine Mile.
Brian, I was wowed by that performance at Woodbine. It was a good field of North American horses and some very nice Euros in there. And World Approval just toyed with them, Brian. There was no doubt. Let the pace go and sat a little bit behind, and heading into the stretch heat just drew away with ease. Huge races going a mile, the last 2, including the 4-star Dave, 4 wins out of 5. I got to take back what I said a couple weeks ago. We suddenly have a really good contender for the Breeders' Cup mile. Bring the Europeans on.
Yeah, he's always been a classy horse, and he had a lot of distance races, which probably, as we know now, is not his absolute best. He was always competitive, basically, in them all. Maybe that made him a stronger horse now. He's a little bit older, a little bit more experienced. He's found his niche, and he really did, in both of those races, show a real turn of foot. He's on or near the lead anyway, but then he has that sprint that top milers need. And certainly he looks to be America's top hope, America's top horse for the Breeders' Cup Mile at Del Mar. The Woodbine Mile, very well, maybe his best race to date.
Yeah, no question about that, Brian.
All right, folks, this was our Pennsylvania Derby and our Cotillion preview show. We are going to take a little short respite here on HorsCenter. We're going to take a couple weeks off. We will be back, though, in early October, and it'll be just about 4 weeks out from the Breeders' Cup. So we're going to go Breeders' Cup crazy on HorsCenter when we come back. So be ready for us when we come back. I want to thank all the viewers for watching. I want to thank Derby Wars, our sponsor, the best contest site out there. Parting shots from you, sir.
Any HorsCenter fans that are going to be out at the Pennsylvania Derby, I will be there. And then the weekends after that, I will be at Belmont Park for big races. So please say hello as always. We'll be back in 2 weeks for more HorsCenter. And as always, I want to thank our producer, Brett Workman.
Awesome, Matt. Yeah, I guess it's going to be closer to 3 weeks because we're taking the next 2 weeks off. So we'll be back again in early October for another edition of HorsCenter. Folks, thank you for watching.